Hello, my name is LoG, and welcome to part 3 of this mini-series where we are taking guitar exercises and turning them into musical tools that we can use on a regular basis. Today, we're going to be talking about everyone's favorite technique, which is sweep picking, an extremely valuable technique because it can make certain ideas infinitely easier to play and will probably also give you new ideas that you might not think of otherwise. If you enjoy this type of instructional material, feel free to check out the Patreon at the link in the description. And now, let's get on to part 3 with some sweep picking. So before we begin, let's real quick talk about what sweep picking is, just to make sure everyone is on the same page. It is a technique that people use so that they can play specific passages in a physically less demanding way. And those specific passages are usually figures or shapes, or lead figures, I should say, where you have one note per string. So if I play a figure like this, it's a little major 7 chord, but I will play it like a lead, meaning the notes individually. My pinky is on the D string, ring on the G string, middle on the B string, pointer on the high E string. So if I were to pick this with a standard picking technique like alternate picking, it would look like this. Or if I wanted to use a single pick stroke like downstrokes on the way down and then upstrokes on the way back, that's what that would look like, right? Sweep picking, however, is when you use one picking motion to go through every single string. So let me show you what that would look like. Right hand on the way down, and then, descending through the shape. So I'll do that again. Now, crucially, this is really important because I often see this when people first start practicing this technique, is they think that it's just a bunch of downstrokes and then a bunch of upstrokes. That is not correct for one main reason. When you do a normal downstroke, like just picking one string, there is one particular motion that happens. It is this motion, this kind of upward motion, because you're picking the string kind of coming out like this. And then you reset the string, right? Pick, reset, next string, pick, reset. That is not what sweep picking is. There is no upward or outward motion because you are picking and flowing right into the next string like that. Right? There is no lifting of the hand on the way down or up like this. So if I do the opposite coming up. So if you notice yourself doing this technique or practicing this technique and you notice your hand doing this every time you pick a string, that's not correct. It is one pick stroke that flows through every string. So because of that, what's really important, what many people do is they will often slant the pick. They will kind of let the pick, if I'm going this way, they will slant the pick downwards like this so it just flows through. Because if your pick was straight and you try to do sweep picking, you might kind of get caught in the strings. So that's something to think about. And then the opposite on the way back, right? Kind of tilting it either this way. I kind of tilt it maybe that way. Depends on what's comfortable for the player, of course. But that is the point of the technique. And why do people do that? Because this motion, when you're going through a figure like this, it's physically very easy to do. All you have to do is put your hand in the air, hold the pick, go like this. That's what it will feel like, right? As opposed to trying to accurately alternate pick or standard pick your way through the shape, which is physically much easier, or physically much more difficult, I should say. Why is it more difficult? Because there's more movement going on in the hand. You're doing this every time you're alternate picking, as opposed to sweep picking, where it's just one motion taking you through everything. It's just physically more efficient, right? So for example, if I want to play, this is kind of a classic little practice tool that sounds pretty silly, but it's kind of fun. And that's just going down, pinky, ring, middle pointer, down that little major 7 chord, and then flipping your fingers on the way back. So pinky, ring, middle, pointer. Kind of a classic little fun practice tool. Right? Sounds pretty silly, but you can get this to absolutely burning tempos, and your right hand barely feels like it's doing anything because it's just doing that basically. Remember, there's no upward motion. It's just this flowing through. Like, that would be impossible for me to alternate pick if I wanted to do that. It's just impossible for me to do that. Maybe for some people it's not, but definitely is for me. And this is why people practice this technique, so they can achieve maybe higher speeds or more fluid playing or more finesse while being less physically demanding. That's the point of the technique. So Again, I'm assuming most people are already kind of familiar. There's a million lessons on YouTube in regards to how to do that, but that's generally what the technique is. So in regards to using this in a musical way, what are some shapes that we can play? Fortunately, one of them that people often use to practice this technique is already a pretty usable musical figure, and that is a simple, what is called arpeggio. So the common shape that people will play looks like this. I'll just play it right here. This is a major shape that looks like this. We start with the root on the pinky, third on the ring finger, fifth on the pointer finger, and then we repeat 1, 3, 5 on the top 3 strings, middle, pointer, pinky. So it looks like this: 1, 3, 5, 1, 3, 5. Notice how I'm calling off the specific notes of this arpeggio or chord. It is very important that you know what these notes are, because we're going to modify the shape later. And if we know what the notes are, it's very easy to modify. So that's a shape that people will often play just right there. Again, one single downstroke motion all the way down, and then reverse on the way back. And maybe you do a little kind of alternate picking on the top to hit this note again, do a little pull off and come back. There are a billion ways to do this, and there are already a billion YouTube videos on this exact figure, so I'm not really going to talk about it. But that's generally what the shape is. And so people will practice this up and down. With a variety of different exercises and all that stuff. Very good. And it is, again, a musical tool that you can use in a variety of situations. So instead of just running it like that, what are some things that we can do to give us some more musical context for this, other than it just being a major chord? The first thing you could do, and the kind of the easiest thing, similar to what we did in the previous video, is run this shape in a key. So hit every chord type in that key that you're choosing with this arpeggio shape. Okay, so for example, let's just try this. I'll do it in the key of D. So what are my chords in the key of D? D will be 1. I'm just going to play these little major shapes, 1, 5, 3, or I should say triad shapes. So D is 1, E minor is 2, F sharp is 3 and it's minor, G is major, 4, A is major, 5, B minor is 6, and then C sharp diminished is 7, play it down here as well, and then back to 1. Very simple, talked about that in the previous video. So what we can do is take this arpeggio shape and just modify it to play every chord in the key. Well, if I play the shape right here, this will be D major, the 1 chord, right? Very simple. If I want to play the 2 chord, where is that? This is my root, that's the 1 of the key. E minor, or E is the 2 of the key. The shape is minor, so I need to modify the shape. How would I modify it? By turning it into minor. This is major, 1, 3, 5, 1, 3, 5. To make it minor, I just flat the thirds. There are 2 in here. How do I know that? Because I've memorized where the numbers are. Like I just said earlier, it's really important to do that because it's very easy for me to modify. There are 2 thirds, 1, 3, right there, 5, 1, 3, right here, and then 5 again. So I take both of these thirds, flat them. Now I have the minor version. 1, flat 3, 5. 1, flat 3, not normal 3, flat 3, 5. So the shape looks like this. That's the minor shape. Major, 1 chord, right? Minor, 2 chord, E minor, right? 3 chord, F sharp minor again, right? 4 chord, G major, back to our major shape, 1, 3, 5, 1, 3, 5, like that, right? A major, 5 chord, major again, 6 chord, B minor, back to our minor shape, 1, flat 3, 5, 1, flat 3, 5, right? And then diminished chord, it's different again. The 5s are also flat. I've got 2 5s in here, so this would be 1, flat 3, 5 is there, but flat 5 instead. 1, flat 3, 5 is there, but flat 5 instead. So it looks like this. Kind of tricky to play, and then back to major. So that's every chord shape in that key of D. I chose the key of D for whatever reason. It's just kind of central on the fretboard, so you run them like that. You can just run them through every chord in the key. I might try that. So it sounds like this. I also will say, You might see me do this kind of throughout this video. I am personally not that big of a fan of the downward sweep motion. In my own practice, I really don't do it that much, so I'm not as comfortable because I just don't practice it. I am comfortable with the descending sweep, but not the ascending, because ascending I will usually use pick and fingers, so that's like a side note. You definitely don't have to do that, but I would probably do this. So that's me going, what am I even doing? Pick, middle, pick, like that. So alternating between pick and middle finger, or maybe I'll do like pick, finger, finger, pick, finger, hammer on. So that's besides the point. You don't have to do that. That's just what I personally do. I kind of like the tone a little bit better. I definitely can't get the speed like I could if I just did straight down sweep like that. But speed is not, I don't really care that much. I don't really care about playing these at light speed. It's not really a sound that I'm that interested in. But if that is something that you want to do, yeah, for sure, the downward, upward sweep motion is the way to do that. So with all that in mind, besides just running these shapes through the key, even though that is valuable and they do sound good, what's something else we can do? I would just pick a progression. Just think about the key you're in and say, I'm going to play a chord progression, and I'm just going to make one. How about I'll play 1, 4, 2, 5, 3, 6, and then maybe, I don't know, like 4, 5, 1. So I'm going to play that exact progression. I'm going to be thinking about those moves, and I'll play that with the sweep pattern. So now I'm learning the sound of this progression that I've chosen. I'm practicing, obviously, the technique, and I'm practicing the different shapes, memorizing, oh, this is a 2 chord, so I'll play it minor. This is a 4 chord, so I'll play it major, that sort of thing. So 1, if I play it just up and down, basically, right? Then I said 4, 2, 5, 3, 6, 4, 5, 1. Again, I'm not doing it that cleanly. I'm probably playing a little bit too fast, but just trying to get through this stuff. I think you understand kind of what we're doing, but that's kind of cool, right? It's a progression that maybe I'm trying to write with, so I want to ingrain the sound of the progression in my mind. I can start to hear little melodic moves while also practicing the technique. Maybe I could do a different one. How about a slight modification of that? How about 1, 4, instead of playing 2, I'll play major 2, which acts as a 5 of 5. Instead of playing a minor 3 chord, I'll play a major 3 chord, which acts as the 5 of 6. And then maybe I'll play 2, and then for fun, I'll play minor 4, and then back to 1. Let's try that. This is a little bit more colorful, playing some out-of-key sounds that maybe I'm trying to practice. So 1, I'm gonna try it again. 4, 5 of 5, 5 of 6, 6, 2, minor 4. Then we end on a 1 chord. So that, again, thinking about a progression that maybe I'm trying to practice, trying to ingrain the sounds in my head so I can hear a little melodic moves. Maybe I'm writing with it or whatnot, and I'm using it as a means to practice. So that is what I would do. Think about these standard arpeggio shapes, and again, there are many more than what I'm doing right now, but you can use these shapes. Think about a key that you're in, play chord progressions with them. There's a lot of cool stuff you can get out of this while still practicing that technique. Continuing with these standard arpeggio shapes that we just went over, I'll play it on G major right here. The next step is to break these shapes up into smaller pieces and then practice those small pieces individually. This is super important to do because when we play this shape, this is not one arpeggio shape. It's not just a single shape. It's actually multiple shapes played back to back. What do I mean by that? Well, first of all, what is an arpeggio? An arpeggio is just the notes of the chord. In this case, we're playing major, played in order. So a major chord is just 1, 3, 5 over and over again, 1, 3, 5, 1, 3, 5. So if we're only playing 3 notes, clearly I'm picking more than 3 notes within this shape, and that's because it's multiple shapes played back to back. If I play just the first 3 strings, G, B, D, that's G major 1, 3, 5. That's the full chord. That's a shape in of itself. And then when I play the next set of 3 strings, B, D, G. That's also its own shape. That's 1-3-5, just not in 1-3-5 order. I have 3 in the bass, then 5, and then 1. This is called an inversion. When you play a normal chord, but the root, meaning the 1, is not the lowest note. In this case, it's the 3rd. This is its own shape that needs to be practiced by itself. And then the next set of 3 strings, this is another G chord, except now it's 5-1-3, another inversion. Again, G major, major chord with a note that is not 1 in the bass. This is 5 in this case. But that's still a full G major chord, a shape that must be practiced by itself. And then the last couple notes, right? Top 2 strings, G, B, D, that's another 1-3-5, just the standard G major. So in reality, when we play this shape that we just went over, that's actually 4 smaller arpeggio shapes played back to back. 1-3-5, 3-5-1, 5-1-3, 1-3-5. These shapes need to be practiced individually. It is actually super important to not play these big shapes like this and only practice them as one massive movement. For one very simple reason. If you only practice big monster licks, as I call them, you're only going to be able to play them. You're not going to have anything else to play because this is all you're practicing. And there will be some musical scenarios that these are going to be perfect, and it's going to be like, man, what a great choice. But then there are going to be other scenarios where this is going to be way overkill. It's going to be way over the top. You're going to get into like obnoxious guitar snobbery territory where it's just not going to work in the musical context, right? But that doesn't mean arpeggios don't work. It just means these massive ones don't work. In reality, if you practice the smaller pieces and do something a little bit more delicate, something like that was me playing a little G major arpeggio, and then I got into like an A minor chord after that. But that's a little arpeggio right here. And I can approach it in a more kind of strategic, detailed, delicate way, and I'm not forced to run the entire arpeggio. Now, again, if the entire arpeggio does work, obviously play it, but you want options. When I was young, I only practiced these big ones at light speed because I wanted to impress all my friends. And when I got into musical scenarios and I use these, sometimes I'm like, oh, this is way over the top. Like, this isn't appropriate. This doesn't feel good. This doesn't feel like a good choice. But because that's all I had available, because that's all I practiced, I didn't really have any other options. So breaking these apart into smaller, also very usable pieces is the way to go. So with that in mind, what do? Well, let's go back to our key of D, and we can just run the same exact movements, even those same chord progressions that we were playing, but with the smaller pieces. Let's pick a smaller piece. How about the top string? Just the 1, 3, 5, the top 2 strings of the larger shape, and that's it. What are we going to do? D major is our 1 chord, and I even see the root right here. This will really teach you to see these little arpeggio shapes on 2 strings. This is 1, 3, 5. If I want to go to the 2 chord in the key, there's E, 1, 2, and it's minor, not 1, 3, 5, but 1, flat 3, 5. I'm sure you've played these shapes before. Many, many, many people do, but it's good to know what they are. So D major, and with our little sweep technique, actually, there's some opportunity. Little 2-string sweep, if we want to practice that. Maybe descending as well. Notice what I'm doing, downstroke, then upstroke follow through. Right? A lot of very valuable, very simple little shapes, and you can approach the same stuff as we did before, play progressions, memorize these shapes because they're very useful. What about some of the other ones? How about this one? 5, 1, 3, right? D, G, high E, or excuse me, wrong strings, G, B, high E string, like that. And any sweep idea you want to practice, maybe just up and down. Excuse me. Right? I'd probably do it like that. Pick, middle finger, downstroke, descend like that, and run every chord in the key with these shapes. 5, 1, 3 of D major, 5, 1, 3 of E minor, right? Looks like a little D minor chord because it is. You're just playing that on an E minor. F sharp minor, G major. Again, just running the chords in the key. A major, B minor. C sharp diminished. Again, looks different. How about all 4 of those notes, right? Just sneaking in that top 5th. 5, 1, 3, 5, 5, 1, 3, 5, 5, 1, 3, 5. Right? These very common shapes. And again, do whatever techniques you want to use to achieve those sounds. All of these shapes are really valuable. What about some of the other ones? How about this one? 3, 5, 1 of every chord. Again, approaching it from the perspective of these small little shapes will just give you a lot more material to practice. That's not always just this massive shape. So a lot of stuff you can practice right there, very simple. Again, keeping in mind the technique that you want to use. One more thing to do with these smaller shapes that's actually very easy to do is add in other notes that are not part of the normal chord. So right now you'll notice we're only playing 1, 3, 5 of each respective chord in the key of D, the key that we have chosen to play. So what do I mean by adding other notes? Just adding other numbers that we are not playing. So we're only playing 1, 3, 5. Can I add another number? Of course I can. How about I add in 4 of each respective chord? So I'm going to play D major with its 4, E minor with its 4, F sharp minor with its 4, so on and so forth. Now, okay, how do we do that? How do we find this particular note? How do we know where it is? Well, fortunately on guitar, these note locations are always uniform, generally speaking. So all we need to do is find one instance of 4, look at how that note sits in relation to the other notes, and we now have a way to find it. So if I play standard D major right here, 5, 1, 3. According to my major scale, which right here would look like this, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, right? I can see 4 is here. Very easily found because it's just up a fret from 3, as it always is in your standard major scale. So I see, oh, look, it's just up a fret from 3. I know this shape is 5, 1, 3. There's 3, up a fret. But I also see something else. I know this is 1 right here. 4, just drop down a string. That seems to work. And by the way, that's always what it will be. If you have a 1, drop down a string, you're now playing 4. It's normal fourth. Unless you're playing on the G string to the B string, in which then it looks like this. So if this is D to G, 1 to 4 of a D chord, on the G string to the B string, it looks like this, 1 to 4. It's offset by a fret because of standard tuning, how the G and the B string is not the same distance as the other strings. That's for another video. Regardless, right here, if I know that's my root, 4th is just down a string. And I also need to know what type of 4th do all of the chords have? And that is something that we'll go over as we run this. So let's just get a pattern first, a pattern that has like a sweep picking thing going on. So how about I go like this? So that's just me going 5, 1, 3, 4, repeat, go backwards. Right, doubling the 4 on top, doubling the 5 on top, or on the bottom. That's a nice shape to help me practice my downward sweeping, which I'm not that great at. That's our 1 chord. Now I'm gonna go to the 2 chord, it's minor, and guess what? The 4 is still in the same location in relation to the root of E minor, the 2 chord. There's E, drop down a string, there it is. The 3rd is flat, so it doesn't feel exactly the same, but that 4 is actually still in the same location. So 1 chord. Right, how about I start on the top? I can already feel like a pattern. Notice I moved up to the 3 chord. It's the same exact thing as the 2 chord in this way. It's a minor chord with a normal 4, right? Adding it right there. Minor chord with a normal 4. Now what happens if I get to the 4 chord, the G major, the next one? Let's go from the 3 chord right here. Sounds cool, but this note sounds a little out of place. Why is that? This is G. That's the root of the G chord, the 4 chord of the key. 5, 1, 3. That's our root. 4 is always down a string. What's the deal? Why does this sound a little out of the key? It sounds cool, but it sounds like, maybe there's another choice. Well, this is because if we are playing in the key of D, what note is this? The 4th of G. This is G. This note is C. There is no C in the key of D. There is a C sharp. This is why the G chord in the key of D G chord being the 4 chord does not have a 4. It has a sharp 4. That's how all 4 chords are in every major key. They do not have 4s, they have sharp 4s. So if you want to play that chord and stay within the key, you will play that as a sharp 4. This is what people call Lydian, which is the sound of major with a sharp 4, also known as the sound of the 4 chord. So when people use the term Lydian, what they're really saying is the sound of the 4 chord in a major key. That's what this would be. So I'll make sure to do that. It's not 5, 1, 3, 4. It's 5, 1, 3, sharp 4 when we hit the 4 chord of the key. Let's do our pattern. Sharp 4. 5 chord back to normal major. 6 chord normal minor. You'll notice all of the minor chords have normal 4s. You look at the root, drop down a string, that's always where it is. Diminished, let's get a fingering. Let's try this. Right, and then back to major. So you'll notice every chord has a normal 4th, except for the 4 chord. That's the only one that has a sharp 4th. Or only one, I should say, that has a different 4th. Every other chord, the 4th is just down a string from your root. And notice the sound that we're getting. It's pretty cool. I think it sounds interesting. It sounds a little bit more, I don't know, colorful than just standard major or minor. So maybe that's a sound that I really enjoy. Maybe it's a sound I can use. I can even go so far as playing those chords, and instead of playing 5, 1, 3, I can straight up not play 3 at all and only play the 4, 5, 1, 4. And I can get chords like this, right? A lot of people call these quartal chords, like quarter, like a fourth, because these are just fourths stacked like this, right? In the respective spots in the key. Can be pretty cool. A lot of people will play these shapes, and they're very easily found because all we're doing is we're just taking our normal shapes, getting rid of the 3, and only playing 4 instead. Get some interesting figures. Then the next thing I would do, of course, we're only doing this on the top 3 strings. If I were you, I'd probably do this on the other strings as well. So instead of just only doing D major 5, 1, 3 right here, I would maybe do it there as well. That's the same exact thing as what I just did right here. Just on the different set of strings, that maybe for a separate video. But again, that's probably what I would do. By the way, always trying to use these sweep techniques. You might see me throwing in some fingers and whatnot, but that's just my personal preference. You can do almost every shape I'm doing right now with just that sweep technique. And we can even go one step further. What's one more thing we can do? Maybe I really like the sound of this 4 on top. Can I put it on the bottom as well? So what can we do? Remember, I know the larger shape that we've been playing. I know there's a bunch of little mini shapes inside of that. This shape right here was 5, 1, 3. We were adding 4 on top. Well, this shape right here is 3, 5, 1. Well, guess what? If this is 3, 4 is there. That note is the same as this, right? Just down an octave. So I can play a figure like this. 4, 3, 1, 5, 4, 3, like that. Pretty cool. Really nice for the sweep picking type thing. I'm going downstroke, upstroke, follow through, follow through, follow through, downstroke, hammer on with from the 3 to 4, and then downward sweep all the way down. Kind of tricky to play, but really cool sounding. And then same thing with the minor chord. Watch this: 4, flat 3, 1, 5, 4, flat 3. See, every time I'm on that D string, it's 4 and then 3 of the respective chord. Very cool figure. I'd have to practice this one. Excuse me. Watch this. 4 chord, sharp 4, 3, 1, 5, sharp 4, 3. See that distance? Right, same distance as this sharp 4, 3, whole step, sharp 4, 3, whole step. Definitely have to practice that one. 5 chord normal. 6 chord normal minor. 7 chord is probably going to be tricky. That's not bad. That's 4, flat 3, 1, flat 5, 4, flat 3 again. So these shapes, in my opinion, are a lot more interesting than just the standard major or minor. Even though standard major minor is good too, you see how easy it is to get some different sounds just by popping in other notes from the key on each chord. Get some really cool stuff. And by the way, we are always practicing our sweep picking. So moving on from those standard arpeggio shapes, is there another way that we can practice our sweep picking? One of the best things you can do is look at one thing that you're practicing and see if you can re-engineer that thing to practice it with a different approach. So let's say I'm practicing my seventh chords in a key, kind of like we talked about in the previous video where we were playing these seventh chords, using them as a way to practice a little finger flip like that, right? One chord, two chord, three chord, stuff like that. So let's say we're practicing standard seventh chords on the middle four strings. Well, can I kind of re-engineer this practice session to play those chord shapes while also practicing sweep picking? Of course I can. I can just run up and down the chord shape. So that would be this shape up and down. Right, that's my major seven chord. One chord of the key of D, same key as we've been doing. 1, 5, 7, 3, and I'm just going up and down with my sweep picking technique. And of course, I'm playing the notes like a lead, so I'm lifting off when I'm finished. Stuff like that. Now that's cool, and I can run that in the key, all sounds good. But is there something else I can do to maybe get a little bit more, I don't know, interest in the shapes? Well, one thing I noticed is I'm doubling the bottom note and the top note. I'm playing this note once on the bottom, D, A, C sharp, F sharp, right? Kind of doubling that F sharp on top. So instead of just playing the same note twice, maybe I'll play another note. So what notes do I have available? I know this is the third of this chord, 1, 5, 7, 3. I've memorized that. It's a vital part of practicing chords, always knowing what the intervals are. So if this is 3, 2 is right here. I know 2 exists in this chord. You hear it all the time. It's a really nice note to add into your major chords. So maybe, and minor chords as well. So maybe I can add that note in on the descent. So I'll play 1, 5, 7, 3, 2, 7, 5, 1. So the A, D, and G strings are always 1, 5, and 7, but I'm putting this little melody on top, 3, 2, like that. Sounds like this if I play it over and over again. Personally, I'd probably play it with pick, finger, finger, pick, pick, like that. That sounds a little bit, or it feels a little bit more comfortable for me, and it sounds a little punchier, I suppose. So that's kind of a cool configuration of notes. I like how that sounds. So now what I will do is take that structure and do it on every chord in the key. What were the chords in the key? D major 7, 1 chord. E minor 7, 2 chord. F sharp minor, 3. G major 7, 4, A dominant 5, B minor 7, I could do it up here, I'll do it down an octave, and then C sharp minor 7 flat 5 for the 7 chord. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and then 1. All very typical stuff, talked about it in the previous video, you probably already know that. So how can I take my little melodic figure that I just came up with and apply it to every chord? I'm just going to look for opportunities. So I like the first one. Hearing that little 3, 2 on top, I like that. How about when I go to the 2 chord, minor? For this one, I kind of like the sound of 4 over minor, and that's pretty easily grabbable. This is 1, 5, flat 7, flat 3. If that's flat 3, that's 4 right there. So I'm actually going to walk up, hit the 4 first, and then the 3rd. Gives me this kind of suspended to minor sound. Practicing this also teaches me that this is the distance from 1 to 4 up an octave. Nice to know. I'm going to do the same thing for the 3 chord. The 4 chord is major 7, just like the 1 chord. So I'm actually just going to do the same thing that I did on the 1 chord. 3, 2 on the 4 chord as well. 3, 2. Right? Nice shape. 5 chord is dominant. 1, 5, flat 7, 3. And I'm going to play what I just did right there. That was putting the 4 on top and then 3. A little suspended and then normal dominant. Looks like this. It's getting a little crammed, so I'll go to the 6 chord down the octave, standard minor, 1, 5, flat 7, 4, flat 3, giving us that little suspended figure that we were doing on every other chord. How about the 7 chord? Minor 7, flat 5, 1, flat 5, flat 7, flat 3. With this one, I'm actually going to play the 4 of that also. Notice the distance, 1 to 4, just like it was right here, 1 to 4, 1 to 4, except we're now looking here. This chord has a 4. We added in earlier in the video. Love that sound, so I'll do this. Pretty cool. And back to the 1. So you would just run these, of course, up and down in the key. I'll try that. Just going through every chord. Very pretty sounding. I'm a big fan of these sounds. So again, the next thing you would do is say, okay, I've got my preliminary practice, getting comfortable with the sweep motion, getting comfortable with these shapes. Then I would try to do a chord progression, right? So how about I do like a circle progression? So that would be like 6, 2, 5, 1, 4, 7, and then major 3 or dominant 3, which I'll do this, right? The 5 of 6. So I'll try that. It's the whole thing. 6, 2. Actually, I'm going to do it without talking. Very colorful, right? So you can immediately start just trying stuff with these shapes, and it sounds really interesting. I like these shapes in particular because they sound a little bit more jumpy than the standard major or minor arpeggios we were doing earlier. If you remember that shape, that larger shape was 1, 3, 5, 1, 3, 5. The shape we're doing now is just 1 right to 5. So you kind of hear this larger jump right off the bat as opposed to a more gradual climb that the standard arpeggio gives. And not to mention we're also playing 7 in there, which is pretty cool. Just slightly different sound. So you're getting a different sound, but the approach is pretty much the same thing. Of course, still practicing that same technique. Super valuable. I like these ones a lot. They're really nice to kind of move up to a higher melody note, like... Let's say if I'm playing D major and I want to target the 3rd right there, notice what I just played. I'm walking through the chord, 1, 5, 7, 2, and then hammering on to 3, kind of doing my opposite little melody move on top. Really nice just tactic to kind of take you from a low note, boosting you up to a high note pretty quick, and they sound nice. One thing we haven't done yet in this video is come up with a figure that covers all 6 strings. So let's see if we can do that. Easiest thing to start with is a chord that you know that covers all 6 strings. So if we are in the key of D like we've been playing, I can easily see a G chord right here. That's a 4 chord in this key. A is the 5 chord. And then B minor is the 6 chord. And I even see a D chord 1 right here. So I can use these basic bar chord shapes to practice my 6-string sweeping technique. So if I just run up and down the chord just like this, notice I'm also playing the notes individually like a lead as best as I can. I'm not holding them all down, although that does sound cool and is something to practice. I'm specifically thinking about this in a lead context, so I want to hear the notes individually. I'm also doing the pick, finger, finger thing. Let's try just normal sweeping. Excuse me. You can immediately tell I'm not as good at that technique as using pick and fingers, but so far that's nice. It's a nice template. Of course, I can do the B minor as well. It's a nice sound. So now what I want to do, even though these are cool, I want to modify the chord. I want to get something a little bit more interesting. And how do I do this? First of all, I must know the notes that live inside this chord, right? The numbers in relation to what the chord is. From the thick string to the thin string, from E string to E string, it is 1, 5, 1, 3, 5, and 1. The shape is always that. This is G major, 1, 5, 1, 3, 5, 1. The actual letters would be G, D, G, B, D, and G. If I went to A, it's still A majors, 1, 5, 1, 3, 5, 1. The letters are now different, A, E, A, C sharp, E, A, but the numbers are the same. If I go to this B minor bar chord, guess what? The numbers are still the same, 1, 5, 1, 3 under the G string, now flat 3, because we're playing minor, 5 and then 1, right? Have to know these numbers inside of the chords because that's what the notes are in relation to the chord you're playing. And because I know those numbers, I can easily modify. I'll do it on A right here. So I like starting on 1 and 5, but I've got a 1 right after that. That's fine, but maybe I can do something different. Well, I know this is 1. Guess what's nearby 1? 2. That gives me this shape. Very classic shape that people love to play, 1, 5, and 2. It's like 2 power chords stacked on top of each other, 2/5 on top of each other. Very popular shape. So I can do that, 1, 5, 2, and then I can grab the 3 right here, just like it was in the chord, giving us this shape, which in of itself is very popular. Now, earlier I was playing 5 and 1 right here to finish up the top 2 strings of the chord, but now those notes are a little bit out of reach, especially if I'm playing my pointer finger or using my pointer finger to play the 3rd. Jumping here to the 5 is a little tricky. So let's get some other notes. Again, I know this is 5. I know what notes are nearby 5. How about 6 is right there? Like I'm playing a major scale. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I'll throw that in. 1, 5, 2, 3, 6. So my high E string note, I could play 1. I could drop it down, play 2 right there. 3, 6, 2. How do I know that's 2? Because I know that's 1. Because I know that's top note of this bar chord is 1. If this is 1, that's 2. If this is 2, that's 3. So I have all 3 of these notes I can mess with. That's 1 on top, 2 on top, pretty cool. That's really nice, a very distinct sound on top because we have that like stacked 4th sound we talked about earlier. And then I also have 3 right here. That one's kind of fun because it's just physically so easy to play. It's pointer, middle, pinky, pointer, middle, pinky. Where I'm using the same fingers over and over again. So I can do this for the A major. I can also do it for the G major. I can do it for the D major too. Very colorful sound. I like this one, especially with this 6 right there. I haven't really played any chords targeting 6 so far in this video, so I'm kind of getting a different sound by doing that. Very cool figure. And I'm just playing in the key of D. I played 5, 1, 4, and then 5. What about the minor version? Here's B minor. Let's see what we can come up with. Our standard shape, 1, 5, 1, flat 3, 5, 1. I'll keep 1, 5, 2. I like this figure. Now, where's my 3? That's where the major 3 was before, but now we're playing minor, so it's here. So I can even just do 1, 5, 2, flat 3, 5, 1, right? Really nice, very colorful. But let's get something a little bit different. So instead of playing flat 3 to 5, what else is on this string that I could play? Well, I see flat 7 right here, right? Always up 3 frets from 5. That's part of minor pentatonic. I can easily sneak that in, so I get this. Very popular, very cool sound. And then I might as well add this note on top. Just, again, keeps it kind of uniform fingering-wise. And this is 4 of B minor. 1, 2, flat 3, 4, which I love 4 over a minor chord. So let's toss that in. If you've ever heard, what's the tune? Mystical Potato Head Groove Thing by Satriani. He kind of covers it. And he does that. That's what this figure is, except we are just picking everything. This is also a figure that's used in the very beginning of a piano piece by Liszt named Mephisto's Waltz. Mephisto's Waltz. This is a figure that's sort of happening in the beginning of that piece. Check it out if you can. Very colorful. So I can play G major, A major, B minor, D major, E minor. Let's do that, but with these different shapes. Notice this shape right here, E minor. Playing the same shape that I played on B minor. It's just copied and pasted to E minor. Right? Very cool figures. I threw in a little C major right there just for fun. So these shapes I can definitely use. Very colorful, very different sounding, and especially if I have the opportunity where I'm playing just kind of standard minor solo at a gig or something like I'm going to demonstrate at the end of the video, tossing some of these in there is going to throw in this really cool injection of color that maybe I wouldn't naturally think of, but purely from practicing this technique, I've come up with these figures that are comfortable to play, sound really cool, practicing the technique, I'm getting everything done all at the same time. Now, if you like these shapes, I will say, I have a power-up that is basically this exact movement using not the same shapes all the time, but a very similar movement. So you could just practice along with me if you want to get these exact shapes down. And that power-up sounds like this. So before I test out these ideas over a backing track, I want to talk about something that is really important when it comes to practicing new techniques. So everyone has their general kind of natural play style, what they do on a regular basis. Maybe someone's really big into hammer-ons and pull-offs, or someone's really big into alternate picking, and they are practicing a new technique like sweep picking, or maybe using picking fingers or whatever, as a separate thing. In the early stages, that's basically what it's going to feel like. They have their natural play style, and then they have these new techniques that are a separate thing. And you kind of have to practice them like that to get comfortable with them. But what you want to do over time is slowly start to incorporate those new techniques so that they all blend together in your natural play style. Meaning, you get to the point where sweep picking, if that's the new technique you're practicing, is happening naturally without you having to think about it. If you only practice sweep picking as this separate entity that's not part of your normal playstyle, here's your normal playstyle, here's sweep picking. If you want to use it in your actual playing, you kind of have to think about it. You have to make the choice. You have to like hit this button in your brain that says, all right, it's time for the sweep picking licks, and you start doing it, and then you go back to your normal playstyle. Not that that's a problem, it's totally cool, but I think it's a little bit more valuable to have these techniques slowly start to pop up without thinking about it. They just happen naturally because they're now part of your natural play style. And there's a variety of ways to do this, but one of the best ways, in my opinion, is use these techniques inside of your normal play style in ways that you don't necessarily need them. Right? So for example, if I'm playing B minor pentatonic, same key, we're in the key of D, just playing around B minor, the 6th chord. Let's say I'm doing something really simple, like a little B minor move like this. That's just walking up B minor chord. 1, flat 3, 5, flat 7, sliding up to the root. Right? Just playing standard B minor. Now, naturally, maybe I would play that alternate picking. I don't need to play that any other way. It's comfortable. But I'm going to sweep pick that anyway. Even though I'm already playing it with alternate picking, I'm going to use sweep picking regardless. So instead of this, I'm going to force myself to do this. Right? So every time I do a simple figure like that, I'm going to force myself to say, hey, even though I can alternate pick it just fine, I'm going to use sweep picking anyway and see what happens. So I could be in the middle, B minor pentatonic, nothing crazy. You might notice right there, I snuck in a tiny little sweep picking figure. I didn't have to do that. I could have done this, where I just picked everything. Pick, hammer on, pick, pick, pick. But instead I did pick, hammer on, little 2-string sweep right there. Just forcing myself to sneak it in the middle of what I would normally be doing increases the chances that your hands are going to consider that technique as a viable option when you are just playing normal stuff, as opposed to your hands only thinking that technique is viable for like the obvious sweep picking ideas. You want your hand to see these techniques as opportunities in whatever situation you find yourself in. So just look for stuff. Look for stuff in your normal playing where you could sneak in this technique, even though it might not be necessary. And then you might start to notice some patterns or something that you feel not only is the technique working, but it actually makes the pattern easier. That's an even better way to incorporate these techniques. So let's say I'm playing B minor pentatonic again, and I do a figure like this. Right, walking up B minor, 1, flat 3, 4, passing tone, and then I hit this F sharp and do a little F sharp minor chord right there. And I notice, oh, that's perfect for a tiny little 3-string sweep. So I can do this. I don't have to do that. I could pick it just fine, but I'm going to force myself to do some little tiny sweep right there. Now, most people would call this by a different name. They would say I'm playing economy picking. Economy picking is essentially alternate picking or hammer-ons and pull-offs on a single string, and then using sweep picking when you're traveling through strings, right? You can think about it like that. For me, it's all the same thing. It's just all mixing this sweep picking feel in the middle of everything you're doing. I think it's really valuable because, again, it starts to blend itself into your normal playstyle. And when you discover a little pattern like that, like I kind of like that pattern, right? A little bit of a couple notes on one string alternate pick, travel upwards with a little 3-string sweep, get to that string, do some more notes with alternate picking, and then maybe do it again. So I'll repeat that pattern. Sweep, sweep, sweep. Right, you kind of start to discover, oh, this sweep picking technique, even though I could alternate pick all of that very easily, the sweep picking is kind of making it maybe a little bit easier, maybe a little bit more natural. And your hands will notice those moves and they will naturally start doing them. That's how you want to approach this stuff. And you could look for other opportunities when you discover a pattern like that. That sounds pretty cool. You could try at other spots. I see some more opportunities right here. Up a little D chord, G chord, maybe C sharp minor 7 flat 5 all in the same key, F sharp minor, and then to B minor. Try one more time. Even that little move right there. I did this little, see that? That's me doing a pick, pull off, and I'm doing a tiny little 2-string sweep right here. I really think it's a good idea to just look for opportunities where you can use sweep picking, even if you don't have to, because that trains your hands to consider that technique as a viable option. And you can even do the same thing with kind of like obvious sweep picking licks that are clearly better with this technique, but see if you can just sneak it into other things that you're doing. So one shape that I actually really like to play, B minor again, and I basically just look at the minor pentatonic as two halves, the notes on this side and the notes on this side, right? So you have all of these kind of stacked on one side, and then you have this D, F sharp, B, E, A, and then D, or flat 3, 5, 1, 4, flat 7, flat 3. And I'll play them as little groups. So I'll play them as chords first. Like I'll play these 3 on the right side of the shape, these 3 on the left side. These 3, these 3, these 3. Pretty cool figure. I'm probably already doing that with 2 strings, right? But with 3 strings sounds cool. And you can use some, sweep picking with this. It's a really cool figure that just has this interesting flavor, and it's all pentatonic, all pretty easy to use. But I notice, hey, this works really well with sweep picking. So maybe I'll do like a run or something like that. Standard B minor, walk my way up there. And then move into something else, right? Just trying to inject my lines, my normal play style, with licks that use this technique. Here's some other examples of noticing where sweep picking can come in handy in my normal playing. Let's say I'm playing over B minor again, and I'm trying to sneak in a couple little diminished arpeggios. Maybe I'll play B diminished, A sharp diminished, and then finally B minor. So what can I do? Let's say I'm already kind of up top playing a little bit of B minor, and I sneak in a little bit of B diminished, go back a fret, and resolve. But I notice, oh, you know what else I can do? Instead of playing diminished like this, I can play diminished like this. And that allows me to use some very easy sweep picking configurations. So now I'm using this technique to enhance a concept that I'm already practicing. I'm blending the 2 practices together. Here's another example, another one that I kind of was messing around with as I was making this video. A little shape that practices the kind of 3-string groupings. I would probably play that as sweeping down, then pick, finger, pick, but you can do it however you want. A little shape that's kind of derivative of that standard kind of minor arpeggio, right? I'm just playing fifth, root, fifth, flat 7, root, flat 3. It's a little like reverse kind of X pattern, very easy to play. And maybe I'll look for ways to play that in my standard playing. Here I am playing B minor. Right, just kind of sneaking in as a little color. But then I can say, let me enhance this. I like the pattern. I like how it feels. Is there some other notes I can play? Here it is on the high E string. Maybe I can move to the B string, try a different version. So this is still B minor, but now I'm playing 2, 5, 1, flat 3, 5, flat 7, reminiscent of that kind of big shape we were playing earlier. Can I play one into the other? Really nice. So sneak that into my normal playing. I like that. Natural next step, continue pushing forward, looking for ways to develop this. How about I move back this way? Right? Kind of tricky, big of a kind of a big stretch. But what sound am I getting? Root, fourth, flat 7, flat 3, 4, 5. Very cool sound. I can do that in the midst of the others. Right? Throw that into my normal playing. Make myself kind of travel to this area to sneak it in there. And then maybe I would continue moving down. I was doing this. Kind of playing almost a different chord, essentially. E minor, flat 3, 5, 1, flat 3, 5, flat 7. Really cool. Playing 2 on top, 2, 5, 1, flat 3, 5, flat 7. And then maybe do it on B minor. That's a really nice figure, and it's constantly using this particular sweep picking pattern. So I can play this, continue. Really colorful sound, and I can maybe try to find my way into the beginning of that shape from my normal playing, B minor. If I notice myself up here, it's like, okay, let's sneak this lick in. Maybe just end like that. Such a cool ending. And I can experiment with all different ways to approach that lick, develop the idea, and all of this is coming from what? Thinking about a basic sweep picking pattern that I'm trying to play and trying to weave these ideas into my normal play style so these ideas naturally come about. It's really important that you do that to make sure that these new techniques don't exist as this like separate thing that you have to think about. They will normally start to happen just in the middle of your normal playing, or you'll start to notice opportunities where you can easily slide into that technique. So with all that in mind, let's now go over what these sounds, or how we can use these sounds and use these techniques over the backing track we've been using throughout all of these videos. All right, just like the previous videos, we are going to test out all of these ideas over the 2-chord vamp of C minor to F7, that kind of solo section for Mr. Magic by Grover Washington Jr. And just like the previous videos, we need to know what key we are in when we are playing over this, because a lot of the ideas that we just came up with are based on chords or the sounds of chords. So we want the full pool of chords available to really test out all of these ideas and get some cool sounds. In the previous video, we discovered that we are in the key of B flat, and we are simply playing 2 and 5 over and over again as a loop or a vamp in the key of B flat. So C minor to F7 is 2 to 5 in the key of B flat. So let's get the rest of the chords in B flat so we have all of the different sounds we can mess with. So B flat major or major 7 is 1, C minor is 2, D minor is 3, E flat major or major 7 is 4, F major or F dominant 7 is 5, G minor is 6, A diminished triad or minor 7 flat 5 is 7. That's our full suite of chords that we can experiment with. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to turn on the track and I'll probably start messing around with E flat, the 4 chord, just because it's kind of in this area of the fretboard that gives me some room to move up and down. And E flat as a sound works really well over C minor because they are relative major and minor. You can also think about this. E flat is what chord in this key? B flat is 1, 2, 3, 4. E flat is the 4 chord. C minor is the 2 chord. They are relative major and minor, meaning the 4 chord of any key and the 2 chord of that same key are always going to be relative major and minor. A lot of the notes will overlap. A lot of the ideas you can kind of cycle back and forth between. So that's where I'm going to start. And I'm going to play this very standard major arpeggio that we started with. Right? Mess around with that. And I'm going to run that shape through the key just like we did, but now in the key of B flat. Now there's something kind of interesting with this track to think about, and that is the fact that the track is swung. So I'm going to play it. So you'll notice, if I just kind of mouth the notes, it would be this. Right? Those are swung. Straight would sound like this. So this can be kind of tricky because when we practice our sweep technique, one of the goals of practicing the technique is to get an even timing as we move down. But when you play swung or swing, the point of that is the notes are not even. They're not da ba da ba da ba da ba da. It's da ka da ka da ka da ka da. So it's going to be a little bit tricky to do that with the technique. I'll kind of give it a try right now. So this is straight. Right? So ba ba da ba da ba da ba da. This is swung with that same chord, same technique. Straight. Definitely tricky because the timing, again, is a little bit inconsistent. You have to feel that swing feel in your hand when you're doing this. Can be a little tricky. It's very difficult for me to do this on the way down like that because I'm not terribly practiced at this type of sweep motion going down this way. Fortunately, pick and finger is very easy to swing, so very easy to do that, so I have no problem with that. But yeah, keep that in mind, something to think about. I'm just going to run every single arpeggio with these basic chord shapes all the way through the key from the 4 chord all the way up to the 4 chord, just because that gives me some nice room to mess around. Let's try it. Already sounds pretty cool. You're starting to hear all the different chords in the key, what they sound like over the track, getting some interesting sounds. Maybe I'll try to do 16th note triplets. So that would be actually straight notes. That would be like that. With a pattern, maybe I can double the bottom and top note. That will give me a seamless connection of those notes. Give it a try. I'm not super great at this, but I'll try it out. Jump back into standard C minor. Kind of cool if you want that like flurry of notes. Other things we can do, or maybe just play the top couple strings of these shapes, not the entire thing. So break it apart into smaller pieces. I'll play just the top 4 notes. So that would be 5, 1, 3, 5 of every chord. So I'll start on E flat again. Nice. Again, a little bit more maybe useful because you're not committed to that massive shape like we talked about before. You can mess around with different rhythms like kind of getting some different, maybe like right, just different little opportunities that all kind of exist within that little shape. You can, of course, break it apart into different chunks. So instead of the top 4 notes, 5, 1, 3, 5, you can just do 3, 5, 1, 3, kind of the D string, G string, B string, high E string of these shapes. Also very valuable. Another thing we were doing was playing these shapes but adding notes. We were adding like the 4 to the top of each chord. I'm going to start with the 5 chord right here, F major, so the full arpeggio. Right, works well because it's actually one of the chords in the track. So if I just play the top little shape right here, 5, 1, 3, but add in the 4. So instead of playing 5, 1, 3, 5 of each chord, I'll play 5, 1, 3, 4, giving us this kind of suspended flavor. So I'll do it on the F chord. Pretty cool sound. If I run through every chord in the key, Remember, it's going to play each chord's respective 4. If I start on the 4 chord, however, it's not this. You'll hear how that note's a little maybe doesn't fit in this key because it's not in the key. Because 4 chords do not have 4s, they have sharp 4s, right? We talked about that. Right? It sounds a lot more normal. It might sound a little bit more peculiar in of itself, but in the key, that is the natural existing note. By the way, this is the sharp 4 of the 4 chord, right? And it's also what? The 6th, natural 6th of C minor, the first chord of the progression, right? This note is A, the 6th of C minor, and A, the sharp 4 of E flat major. Nice little overlap to remember because that's always going to be there. It will never change in every single key you always play. If you're in a standard major key, the sharp 4 of the 4 chord will always be the 6th of the 2 chord, the color note, the Dorian note of the 2 chord, right? So nice little connection. Let's try that. So just 4, 3, 1, 5 of every chord in the key. Nice and slow, right? Really strong sound. Minor, G minor. The diminished chord, A diminished, has a normal 4. B flat, C minor, D minor, sharp 4, back to the E flat on top. Pretty cool. I like that sound quite a bit. And then we can also take that same figure and play that added 4th down an octave as well. So instead of 4, sharp 4 in this case, sharp 4, 3, 1, 5, we'll go sharp 4, 3, 1, 5, down here, sharp 4, 3. Basically playing this little move just down an octave as well. We talked about that figure. Pretty cool. Works well with the sweep pattern as well. Trying to get that swing feel in the sweep. Like that. Tricky to do. 5 chord F major. Again, adding its 4, 4, 3, 1, 5, 4, 3, getting these really cool sounds on the bottom. 6 chord, same thing. 4, flat 3, 1, 5, 4, flat 3. That one's cool because it's going to be the same for all the minor chords. So if I do it on C minor, right here, it's going to look exactly the same. D minor, same thing. B flat. 7 chords, really cool. Right, that's kind of A, it's basically A diminished, right? Which works perfectly over this track because a lot of those notes overlap over the C minor, especially C minor 6, and over the F7. Really nice. Really cool flavor. Really nice sounds. And then a really cool one that I personally enjoy a lot is back to that same figure we were doing up top, right? Just 4, 3, 1, 5 of each chord, but don't play 3. So you only have 4, 1, and 5 giving you these, right? That's stacked fourths, as they say. So it's a really cool sound. You're just playing 5, 1, 4 of every chord. You can play them individually, little sweep patterns. Right? Super interesting sound. One of my favorite sounds to play. So that is also built into there. Again, sounds kind of fancy, sounds complex, but it really isn't. We're just playing what? This larger arpeggio shape. Right? How do we get to these sounds? Larger arpeggio shape, playing just the top couple strings, right? 5, 1, 3, but strategically choosing to not play 3 and only play each chord's respective 4. And that gives us these really cool figures. Right? So something to definitely experiment with. I love those sounds. So in regards to the basic arpeggios, that's kind of where we started the video with. That's pretty much it, but there's a lot of material you can get with that. So with that in mind, let's move on to the other chord shapes we were playing based on your standard bar chords on a variety of strings. All right, so the chord shapes that we were playing were those 7 chord shapes on the middle 4 strings. So if I just do it on C minor right here, standard shape 1, 5, flat 7, flat 3. And we were adding in an extra little melody note on the B string. So if I just walk up and down. Pretty cool. I'll just run through all the chords in the key, so. Nice flavors already. I kind of like using these shapes as like a little flourish, like a big jump up to a note. So I've been trying these rhythms like, right? Really nice. I've been digging those pretty heavily. So then another thing you could do is just look for opportunities to find these same sort of figures on different sets of strings. We didn't really talk about this, but that's the natural next step. So for example, this shape, C minor, 1, 5, flat 7, 4, 3, the pattern. I also notice it right here on the thick E string, right? 1, 5, flat 7, 4, 3. It's the same exact thing as this, right? So that's pretty cool. I can just play this one right here, go right to F7 right here. I feel the progression just happening right inside this lick, so. Right, and I find this other little shape right here. It exists inside the sound. It's basically E flat major, 5th, 2nd, 3rd, and then root of E flat. What the exact chord is, it's good to know, but for me, I just see that it's possible, and I see that it works with this picking configuration, this little sweep pattern that I have, right? Really nice sound. The other thing we can do is get into the 6-string version of what we were playing. And of course, you can just play standard, triad. So C minor, that would be this. Right, just walking up. Very simple, but we were, of course, adding notes. So instead of playing C minor, I'll play B flat first. Instead of just playing straight up major, we were playing 1, 5, 2, 3, 6, 3 for the major chord. So B flat, 1 chord. Very significant sound. 4 chord E flat, same shape. It's getting a little crammed. 5 chord, same thing. Right? Already really nice sounding. For C minor, we were playing 1, 5, 2, flat 3, flat 7, 4. Kind of this massive sound. I tried to do a 16th note triplets, so. Again, really distinct sound that throw that in the middle of your play kind of standard minor, then throw some of those runs in there. It's going to sound super awesome. It's just going to be like this injection of really interesting color. And you're also practicing that technique at the same time. Very cool. And look for other opportunities for other little shapes. Like one that I personally like to do, it's kind of hard. And that's just I'll look at C minor. 6 strings, I'm basically just playing 1, 5, 1, 5, 1, 1, 5 on every string, right? Very tricky to play for some reason. That's cool. Yeah, big fan of just noticing little movements like that. So that's the 6-string variant. We've gone through all these big chord shapes. You can clearly use this technique to get all that stuff. So now let's move on to some of those other things we were practicing that kind of notice where to use sweep picking in your normal day-to-day playstyle. All right, so some of these final figures, we're basically looking for places to use sweep picking in our normal playing. Just going to experiment. So minor pentatonic. Very simple. We were kind of playing these little stacks right here. Just using sweep picking to play them individually. Kind of gives us that like stacked fourth sound that we were getting before. Really cool flavor. Some other things, we were kind of doing some economy picking stuff, playing a little sweet passage, doing some alternate picking. Pretty cool. One more time. Don't necessarily have to use that technique. You can alternate pick. Again, looking for opportunities to use sweeping instead of alternate picking. Really cool sound. Let's try that one a little quicker just to see if we can do it. So. Really nice. Is there another one we can do? That kind of plays into a different sound that I've been practicing, using that diminished 7 on top of minor. So we could do stuff like. Sneaking in that technique again within those shapes, really nice for that. Again, the point is, think about what you're already practicing. Look for ways to sneak this technique into those ideas so you're practicing multiple things at the same time. The last figure that I really liked, that I was really messing around with, was this little guy. I'm still working on it, and that's that basically kind of that X pattern. I was running that through all the chords in the key. This is C minor right here. D minor, E flat, such a cool flavor. I'm trying to play those for all the chords. So C minor, B flat major. So notice what the shape is. It's each chord's 5, 1, 5, 7, 1, 3. So this is minor, so it's 5, 1, 5, flat 7, 1, flat 3. Same thing for D minor. When I play E flat though, it's 5, 1, 5, normal 7, 1, 3, because we're playing major, right? Really cool flavor. And then I was moving down like this. I really want to get this lick down, so. Super colorful. Let's try a little faster. It's going to be hard. Here we go. Some of my favorite sounds in there. So you can see what I'm doing. I'm looking for opportunities to sneak this stuff into my playing, noticing a particular note, a particular figure where I can jump into that technique and try to weave it into my normal playing. At this point, it's pretty much a part of my playing, but when I wasn't doing this stuff, I really had to think about it. So I forced myself to, again, use this technique in ways that I didn't necessarily have to. So it started to pop up in my natural playing. And now I kind of do it all the time. I'm still working on certain things for sure, but it's such a great technique to have in your playing because it makes certain passages just so much easier to play because otherwise they'd be very tricky. So hopefully all this stuff makes sense. Let's just keep messing around. That does it for part 3 of this mini-series. Hope you enjoyed this one. Sweep picking is truly one of the most valuable techniques to have in your playing. It's just useful in so many different situations. You can, of course, use it for the big, flashy, obvious sort of gimmicky licks, because that stuff definitely sounds awesome. But you can also sneak it into your playing in more subtle ways, just making everything so much easier to play and getting some new ideas that you might not otherwise think of. As usual, if you enjoyed this type of instructional material, feel free to check out the Patreon at the link in the description, and I will see you all in the final part.